Well, it's great to be here on this third Sunday of Advent. And though we are a couple of weeks removed from Thanksgiving in that time in season of thankfulness, and we're in the throes of Christmas season and all that entails, I felt like this message would be one of transition, kind of marrying the book, two of them, and bridging the gap, so to speak. Today's topic on hand is thank God for how He cares, which I might add has an ever so subtle note of Christmas to it. As we begin, I want to draw attention to Jesus' words from Matthew 6. He says, "Look at the birds of the air. They don't sow or reap, yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not much more valuable than they? And then see how the lilies grow. They do not labor or spin, yet they are more majestic than the great King Solomon. If that's how God clothes something so temporary as flowers, will He not much more clothe you?" And as it applies this morning, it's like this. Look at the birds. See how God cares for them by providing for their needs. Does He not care infinitely more about you? And then check out the flowers in the field. Their existence is so temporary and short-lived, and yet He cares enough about them to dress them more beautifully than the richest king that ever lived in Israel. If God cares so much about something so fleeting as flowers to dress them the way He does, how much more does He care about the only aspect of His creation that has been made in His image? And another thing I'm stricken of when I think about how God cares is how I've been trudging through the book of Exodus. And once you get north of the Ten Commandments, so to speak, it kind of just stalls out as far as inspiration goes, because it's all this is what the tabernacle is supposed to look like, this is what the priest is supposed to wear, this is what it's supposed to be, this is how it's supposed to be designed. And I find myself initially thinking, what is this all about? What am I possibly to gain from reading about, make sure that the priests have the ephod, make sure that their gown is this length, and make sure it has bells and rope and all that stuff. But the second thought is, wow, how does God care that He would have such intricate detail as to know that this is the specific things, the length of the tabernacle, the length of each hem of garment. And I was like, wow, that is incredible. With that being said, in this season of Christmas, let's collectively thank God for how He cares. As we look at His Word, just to the extent of His caring, not just in the grand scale of things, of caring that He would provide Jesus for us so that we might have a path to heaven through salvation in Jesus, but how He cares about the very fabric of our lives, the everyday type of stuff, and all the things associated with this side of heaven. So for starters, I want to first look at that exact notion of how much He cares. Look at what it looks like for God to care. A prime example that proves just how much God cares. And this aspect will be of no surprise, but thank God for how He cares about our lives. That He cares about the big stuff, and He cares about the little stuff. You know, it's from the very beginning of our existence we can see God's personal touch in our lives. In the book of Jeremiah, God says, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart." Which, of course, coincides with what David said in Psalm chapter 139, verses 13 through 16. "For you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. My frame was not hidden from you, and when I was made in a secret place, when I was woven in the depths of the earth, your eyes saw me in my unformed body. All the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be." Could someone give me a tissue? Thank you. I had a tickle in my nose and it was making me smile. And then in the back of my head I was like, I bet Norm's saying, "Hey, what's so funny?" What's so funny? I did. So I was like, okay, I just got a break. I got to deal with it. So So then I can move on.
Did you get it?
I did. I no longer have a tickle on my nose. Thank you for that provision. Thanks for caring.
Better than your nose running.
Yes. Okay, so yes, we are made up genetically of chromosomes and DNA from both our parents, but there's another ingredient that is left out from common knowledge, that the Lord is the grand weaver of our lives. He has taken the material from our mothers and the material from our fathers and has woven them into the masterpieces we are today. He was immensely instrumental in how we were created from the get-go. So thank God for how He formed us and created us to be. And maybe you're like me, and there's something that you just kind of like, really, God, why? For me, that's my hair, or lack thereof. I wonder why He decided to activate the no hair gene from my dad when I could have easily had the hair gene from my mom. I don't get it. And one time, I was out hunting and I FaceTimed Coop and Emily, and Coop said, "Dad, where's your hair?" That kind of stung a little bit. But it's kind of a blessing in disguise when I think about it, because if I had hair, I know that I would be the type of person that would be wanting to make it look nice and want to make sure it's trendy, and maybe it has like the buzz on the side with the full on top and all that look thing, but thankfully I don't have to stress about that. Thankfully I don't have to spend time making sure it's all gelled up and not out of place. So there's that. Thank God that He cared enough about me to take the pressure and the stress of being concerned about my looks to that extent.
I'd rather have the hair. Just saying.
Yes. So speaking of hair, another point that shows how much God cares is from Luke chapter 12. We're looking at verses 4 through 7. And the context is Jesus is giving a couple of warnings and encouragement. And the part of that encouragement is Jesus giving proof of just how much God cares. Verse 4 starts by saying, "I tell you, friends, do not be afraid of those who kill the body, and after that can do no more. But I will show you whom you should fear. Fear Him who, after killing of the body, has the power to throw you into hell. Yes, I tell you, fear Him. Are not 5 sparrows sold for 2 pennies? Yet not one of them is forgotten by God. Indeed, the very hairs of your head are numbered. Don't be afraid. You are worth more than many sparrows." Of course, the special focus, is what it says there. Instead, the very hairs of your head are all numbered. Now, there was a time, I think when Emily and I were first married, and I would be secretly concerned when I would go in the shower after her, and I'd see all this hair on the floor. I had no idea that hair just sheds like that. And it took, I don't know, after a while, I never said that to her because I just didn't want to, but God cares that He knows every amount of hair on our heads or not on our heads. And so it reminds me of a song that perhaps God sings as much as He cares. 99 strands of hair on their head, 99 strands of hair. One falls out, goes in the drain, 98 strands of hair on their head. So God cares so much, He knows exactly how many strands of hair are on our head. And leave it to a caring God to care so much that He knows something as detailed and minute as how many strands of hair we have. It's remarkable. So thank God for how He cares. I want to show you from my own life just the extent of how small God can care. About 6 years ago when we moved in and we're getting settled into our rental house, we started unpacking all the furniture and all the boxes, but we came to a standstill because we couldn't find the very important yet small bag, Ziploc bag of furniture screws for our dining room table and our bedroom furniture. We looked everywhere. We unpacked everything. We talked to our parents where there was stuff in their house. We talked to Emily's brother Michael where there was stuff in his garage. No one could find it. So after immense stress and concern, we just like, you know what? We need to pray about it. We need to figure this out. And through praying about it and just singing some songs to Jesus, I felt strongly impressed that we need to ask Michael to look again. Because maybe he looked, but didn't look as good as he could have. And sure enough, that's where this bag of screws were. So God cared enough that He would help us figure out where these screws were. And like I mentioned last month, and what I always tell Coop when he can't find something, hey, it's okay. Even though it's lost to us, it's not lost to Jesus. He knows where it's at. We can ask Him for help. It's never lost with Jesus. So, another thing that points to how much God cares is something that we do almost second nature. Something that comes maybe through a stressful situation or when we're about to lose our cool, but we just don't because we just take a moment. And if you notice, I already gave an example of it. Sighing. Something that we do, again, almost as second nature when circumstances come up, whether it's a disappointment or stress or anxiety or whatever. The point remains the same, that because God cares for us, He is attentive to our sighs. Psalm 38:9 says this, "All of my longings lie before you, lie open to you, O Lord. My sighing is not hidden from you." Isn't that comforting to know that God sees and hears something as little as our sighs? Something that we do without even thinking about it. It just happens. And also the expression of what prompted that sigh. Now, how many times have you let out a sigh because of circumstances or because of life in general? Some of the things, again, are the anxious moments, stressful moments, disappointing moments. It's comforting to know that our sighs are not hidden from Him. Now, I have a go-to phrase of comfort that I always share and I say when something unexpected happens. For example, last Saturday when Norm called me saying, "Hey, there's this big storm coming. I was going to leave to go hunting after Sunday, but I'm going to get ahead of the storm and get out. So could you preach for me?" "Yes." "Well, I'll preach for you." So I had Saturday to get prepared for it. Thankfully, or not thankfully, I don't know. We didn't have service last week. So this is that message where I was going to preach. Anyway, in that moment, I was like, you know what? It was unexpected for me, but it was expected for God. You know, Emily has been working really hard this whole last couple months on this production. But last week it was a little stressful because with this, we were supposed to have a rehearsal Sunday afternoon. However, we couldn't. We didn't because of the weather. But not only that, we had some COVID-related issues, and there was like, oh, how's this gonna impact? And there's to the point where, and I've said it so many times that Emily knows it, that I had to preface saying, well, I know this sounds a little cliche, but God isn't surprised by this. He knew it was coming. What's unexpected for us is expected for Him. He even planned it for it to happen this way. And in the context of God caring so much about us, and for Him to know the exact reasons what prompted our sigh, it reminds me of an analogy of a parent-child relationship, where the child is sad or bummed out and he just has those down feelings, so to speak, and the parent is there holding on to them and comforting and consoling them and saying, hey, I know this is sad, and I'm sorry that happened, and I know you're sad, but I'm here, and things are going to be okay. So thank God for how He cares, even to the extent that our every sigh is not hidden from Him. So moving on to another point to prove how much God cares for us, and if you've been counting, this is number 4. This proof of the pudding is that He cares about our movement. Our lives are in constant motion, never fully stopping for anything. You know, what comes to mind is that saying, time marches on. And the comforting thing with that is, for as much as time marches on, regardless of what we are faced with, no matter what circumstances we see, God is the grand weaver of our lives. He directs our steps, not in the sense that we just, put our lives on autopilot and let it just carry whatever, but rather as we trust in Him, we rest in Him, we are in Him, He is going to guide us and direct us to exactly where we're needing to be. Proverbs 3:5-6, trust in the Lord with all your heart, lean not on your own understanding, in all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will direct your paths. Also, to coincide with that, is Proverbs 20, verse 24, that a man's steps are directed of the Lord. But just as our steps are directed of the Lord, and life is seemingly always in motion, side effect is something that can be bringing discomfort is change, or specifically transitions. When we were in Langdon, on a Monday in October, I was brought into my pastor's office to be informed that we were being let go, that he was taking the church in a new direction. That new direction didn't include him. Didn't include me. And even if we tried to make it work, it just wasn't going to work. My skill sets with what he was wanting to see happen, it just wasn't a fit. It would be like trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. It wasn't going to happen. And it was difficult. It was tough because I had envisioned that I was going to be there for more than the 3.5 years we were there. And we went to a pastor's conference shortly after that, and I was talking to our superintendent's wife, and she was encouraging me with, hey, it's okay, and she shared with me something that she had dealt with in regards to this verse and how a person's steps are directed to the Lord. When she wondered why something was ending and not continuing, she felt the Lord speak to her that it's not just our steps that are directed by the Lord, but also our stops. So to rephrase Proverbs 20, verse 24, not only is a man's steps directed of the Lord, but a man's stops are also directed of the Lord. It's the Lord who guides and directs us in all things by His care and His precisions. He knows how long the season in our lives will last, and He is well aware of when that season is over and it's time to be uprooted and replanted elsewhere, according to His purposes and glory. Hearing Proverbs 20:24 in that light, it helped in the moment, but those feelings of hurt still lingered. And it wasn't until that following summer when I reached out to a pastor friend to help me kind of work through it. And so what he did is that, all right, think back to that moment. Think back to where you were, where he was, what he was saying, and all that stuff. Can you see it? Yeah, I can see it. I hear the words and all that stuff. And then he said, now where is Jesus at? So I thought for a moment, and then I realized, Jesus is right behind the pastor as he's speaking. And he has this look of empathy on his face, which is saying, hey, I know this is terrible. I know this is difficult. But I want you to know this is of me. This is going to be okay. You are going to be okay. And after that, I felt healed. I felt whole again. All because I knew that He was directing that stop, and He truly that was of Him, because that moment ultimately is what led me to this moment. It's all in God's working in my life. So thank God for how He cares, to the extent of not just directing our steps, but also our stops. So before we wrap this up like a Christmas present, I want to further point to how in this season of Christmas we can see His care. Because He is God, He didn't have to provide for us a way to have salvation and eternal life, especially the way He did. But perhaps the reason why He chose Jesus coming to us in the form of the baby was for a couple of reasons. Perhaps he was well aware we weren't going to be able to handle his holiness and the glory if he came out straight like that. Because it says in Exodus that when Moses came down from the mountain after meeting with God, his face shone with the glory of the Lord. And it was so immense that the people couldn't take it. The people asked Moses, cover your face because we can't handle the glory of the Lord that's there. Perhaps also Jesus came to us the way he did so that we would be able to relate to him more. Because if he just came as God, well, we can't relate to God. He's so far above us, it's not even close. But he came as a man, he came as a human just like we are, to make us more relatable to him. Because we're told in Hebrews 4:15, for we do not have a high priest who cannot sympathize with our weaknesses, but was in all points tempted as we are, yet without sin. As well as Philippians 2, verses 5 through 8. Let this mind be in you, which also was in Christ Jesus, who being in the form of God did not consider it robbery to be equal with God, but made himself of no reputation, taking in the form of a bondservant, coming in the likeness of men. And being found in appearance as man, he humbled himself and became obedient to the point of death, even the death of the cross. So thank God for how he cares for us, sending Jesus in the way that he did so that we could relate to him. God truly does care for us, and it's almost overwhelming to stop and reflect and think about just how much he cares. In the very detail, he went into designing everything about us. And to the extent that nothing is hidden from him, nothing that he doesn't care about, even the seemingly small stuff, God cares about. Something I'm reminded of is that phrase of, in the context how we can trick ourselves into not seeking the Lord on something. Well, I'd hate to be a bother to him with something so small. He's got other things to be concerned with. I don't need to trouble him with this trifling of a thing. You know, at Olson, Pastor Norm shared how that spoke to him about when Linda and Pastor Norm were going into Duluth to look for ring shopping, and unlike in Langdon, it's all parallel parking. And so they weren't sure if they were going to find a spot. So what are they going to do? And so Linda said, well, let's just pray for a parking spot. And Norm mentioned that at the time he was new to Christianity, so to pray for something so little didn't even cross his mind. So they pray about it, and right as they turn the corner, what should happen but a car pull out right in front of them, and they took that spot. And not only that, but that spot was right in front of the jewelry shop. God cares about the little things. So it also goes into what I've heard, and perhaps you've heard this too. If it's big enough to worry about, it's big enough to pray about. And of course, the meaning is if something has you worried, stressed, or anxious, it's also something we can be confident in taking it to the feet of Jesus and laying at his feet. Because it also says in the Word that cast your cares upon me and he will sustain you. So we take time to thank God for how much he cares. And one last thing I want to touch on that serves as the exclamation point to all of this, that points to just how meticulously God was in designing each one of us, is a little something called laminin. Does anyone know what laminin is? Surely you know what laminin is. What is it?
It's a substance in your cells that holds everything together.
That is exactly what Google said. Nice. So, it's literally so microscopic, it's super microscopic. And before I confirm that definition, where I first heard it was from a video series from a guy named Louis Giglio. And what he did was he spent the whole time sharing about how magnificent our universe is, how grand it is, and the specific details of it that God did. You know, all this star is like this, and all this stuff, and wow, look how great our God is because of our universe. But then at the end he says, well, but there's also this other thing, and it's called laminin. And that's the real significance that shows God's detail. And so, again, laminin is a protein that's found in the extracellular matrix of any extra substance that are within the cell's tissue. So laminin is the thing that makes up the things that makes up our whole bodies. Like it's the cell of the cells, so to speak. So it's the very small thing that's basically binding every cell in our bodies together. And it's this laminin. And again, by name, you wouldn't understand this significance. Even by hearing the definition, okay, you maybe get a bigger picture. But you don't fully grasp how significant it is when I say God cares about us when it comes to laminin, because the exact image, the image that this laminin is a cross. That is the shape of laminin. So even the super microscopic thing that's basically making up our entire bodies is in the shape of a cross that points us back to Jesus. That's how much God cares. So sometimes, especially in the difficult times, it can be hard to see how God is at work in our lives, or to see certain events being a part of His plan and will for our lives. How could He possibly work out all things for our good? But the truly wonderful news is that because of the extent of how much God cares for us, He really is the grand weaver of our lives. That He cares so, He is carefully, meticulously woven not just our genetics, not just our bodies, but the very events of our lives together, all coming together to fulfill His purpose in our lives. Even now, God is at work in all of our lives, and that is encouraging. Thank God for how He cares, that our lives aren't just random and meaningless strands in which we are here today and could be gone tomorrow. Yes. He always goes for Grandpa Norm. Always. I mean, I'm a pretty big deal in his life, but I'm chopped liver compared to Norm. So we can actively choose to trust God in our lives and see the precise designs He has woven with remarkable care, thought, and intent. That even when we don't see it, He's working. Even when we don't feel it, He's working. Thank God that through His immense care in our lives, He never stops working. And that's how we can be like what Paul says in 1 Thessalonians 5, when he says, be thankful always and be continuing to praise the Lord. He says, thank God in and through every circumstance and situation. Let's just close in prayer. Lord, thank You for the very detail that You have put into our lives. Thank You that You care about the small stuff as well as the big stuff. Lord, thank You that nothing passes Your eye without You noticing it. Lord, thank You for this love and thank You for this care. Lord, I pray that as we've been made aware of it even in greater extent, that we would take it through this holiday season to know Your love for us is great, and we would receive that. We would rest in that You care for us and You are looking out for us. Lord, I pray that we would have a greater trust in You and what You are at work doing in our lives. Be with us now as we leave. Amen.